My 4-year-old son came up behind me while I was working on this piece and tried to pick up one of the leaves that I had drawn. It was just this really triumphant moment that I had made it look 3D, and I want that same awesome moment for you. In this tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to draw these 3-dimensional autumn leaves that seem to pop off the page, and we're going to get started by talking about materials. For this drawing, I started on a piece of Derwent Lightfast paper. This is a super high quality paper. It's 100% cotton, acid free, and it's a hot press watercolor paper. So it plays nicely with colored pencils, but also a variety of other wet and dry media. A special thing about this paper is that it's a natural white color. So it's a little bit warmer than a bright, stark white that you would see on a printer paper, which can be really nice if you want a more subtle background or a more subtle effect. I'm using the Derwent Lightfast colored pencils for this piece, and it should come as no surprise that they work magnificently with the Derwent Lightfast paper because, of course, they were made for each other. These pencils hold a sharp point. They lay down a mid-transparent layer of color, but they can still be fairly opaque, and I am using the 100 set, so I have 100 bright, beautiful, Lightfast colors to work with. I absolutely love the combination of Lightfast paper and Lightfast pencils, especially when I'm working on plants, flowers, leaves, and other botanicals. If you want to learn more about these products, I have several in-depth reviews, which I will link in the notes below. And I'll also post some links to Amazon and Blick in case you want to go and snag yourself some of these awesome pencils or paper. Before I picked up the colored pencils, I drew this leaf on a separate sheet of paper, and then I transferred it onto my final drawing surface. The transfer included the general outlines or the contours of the leaf, some of the vein structure, and a couple indications of the shadows, but it wasn't very busy, and when I transferred it, I made sure that the transfer was incredibly light because I didn't want any heavy outlines or heavy indentations in my paper. After my line work was transferred onto my drawing paper, I began applying the first layer of colored pencil. And in this first layer of colored pencil, I'm usually concerned with just a few things. I'm looking for the initial color impression. So I'm not going for exact colors here. I'm going for quick impressions. What is it close to? I'm also looking to establish the structure of the leaf. So I am closely looking at the form shadows on the leaf or where the light is catching the leaf, and I am anchoring those in so that the leaf begins to take on some 3-dimensionality and some form. And while I am looking at structure, I'm also including a bit of the vascular structure of the leaf or those veins that run through the leaf. But at no point am I coming in heavy or am I pushing really hard with my pencils. I'd much rather build up several light layers that allow me to create a lot of nuance in the color than to lay anything on heavy or permanently at this point. There definitely aren't any hard rules for the order in which you put colored pencils on your paper, but I prefer to start with my darker value colored pencils because they allow me to establish the structure, and then I lay on the local color and glazes of brighter color after. Here I'm using a warm dark orange to map in the bends and folds and structure of the leaf, and then I'm coming over the top with more nuance color. I'm adding some greens and some golds, and I'm building up the actual color of the leaf over the top of the initial structure. After that first layer of colored pencil is complete, I apply a small amount of solvent, and I'm using the Eco House Neutral Thin Solvent for this particular piece. Before you start applying solvent, it's important to make sure you have the right amount of colored pencil on your paper. I am looking for full coverage, so every part of the paper has colored pencil on it, usually 2 to 3 light layers, so that very little of the tooth is showing through, but there's still a bit of a white speckly look. Then I dip the paintbrush into solvent, I apply just a tiny, tiny bit. So I'm usually wiping any excess on the edge of the bottle, and then I work it into the colored pencil and the paper in small circles. So it's not really like painting so much as it is scrubbing. You want to apply enough pressure that you are breaking the pigment from the binder. And it's this breaking of the pigment from the binder with the solvent that allows the pigment to get pushed into the tooth of the paper so that you're able to fill in that tooth and you have a more solid, more even, and more blended coverage without damaging the tooth of the paper at all. Using solvent on your colored pencil pieces can be an absolute game changer. But if this is the first time you're using solvent, then there's a few things that you need to know about this slightly toxic chemical. Make sure that you check out this video before you use solvent on your own. You can watch that right after this video, and it will be linked down in the notes below. The solvent typically takes anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes to dry, and then your paper and your drawing is ready for colored pencil all over again. Layer 2 is a little different from layer 1 in several ways. The first thing that you might notice is that I'm moving a lot slower. Yes, this video is sped up. We're going 7.5 times the normal speed that I was drawing at, but you can still tell that I am moving at a much slower rate through my drawing. I'm taking my time to look very closely at the details, very closely at the subtle color changes and how to render the volume. This also introduces another change where I am using more colored pencils. In the first layer, I probably had anywhere from 10 to 12 pencils in my hand that I was flipping through. I had a few yellows, a few greens, maybe a few colors to neutralize. But now I've got 30 or 40 pencils out. And that doesn't mean that you have to have hundreds of colored pencils or you're not going to be able to create really highly detailed or realistic drawings. But what that does speak to is that there is a lot more color nuance happening at this stage in the drawing. I am looking at each and every tiny change in each and every tiny fold of this leaf. And for me, because I have a large set of colored pencils available, I'm using more colors to illustrate that. However, if you had a 20 set even, you would just be spending more time mixing colors at this phase. So we're now at real speed, and I want to point out the kind of pressure that I'm using in this second phase of the drawing. Now, my pencils are sharper, but in many instances, I'm actually using more pressure. I am pressing hard on the side of the pencil. If I press hard straight down, I am going to break my pencil tips. But if I use the side like I'm doing right here with the white, I'm actually able to burnish my pencils a bit. That allows me to fill in the tooth of the paper so that I don't have any of that white speckly look anymore. It creates that waxy sheen on top, and it allows the colors underneath to blend together because I'm adding more pressure. I'm also adding more pressure on edges like the veins and the subtle edges around parts of the leaf. Are you enjoying this video so far? If so, you might be excited to find out that there is a part 2 coming next week where I break down the entire process for creating this piece and share with you some of the biggest mistakes artists make when they're drawing autumn leaves. If you're excited for that video, or if you found something of value in this video so far, be sure to hit that thumbs up button so that you can let me and the algorithm know. And if you want to be notified right when that video drops, be sure to sign up for my newsletter down in the notes below. For this particular piece, I'm not planning on blending with solvent and adding more colored pencil in a layer 3 or a layer 4. I am trying to resolve this piece in this second layer. So right here, I am adding thin, transparent layers of color, building up specific colors that I see in my reference right next to it. And then I'm bringing that white colored pencil over the top with a lot of pressure to really seal those colors in and to mix them. But I want to be really careful with how much I burnish with this white. I can definitely overdo it if I burnish everything with white, and I could actually eliminate the really interesting texture that I've started creating with this leaf. So burnish to blend the colors and to smooth out a texture that maybe is too rough, but don't go so far that this begins to look like a fake leaf, because we have the opportunity of a real leaf sitting right next to the drawing. This should take on a really lifelike texture. Something that I determined early on in this piece is that I really wanted it to feel like I could lift these leaves off of the paper. And so the cast shadow that the leaf casts onto the paper is a really important part. I don't want these cast shadows to feel really deep and heavy. I want them to feel really natural and soft and not to overshadow the leaf. So the colors that I choose are soft, subtle colors, and I'm using the white and light blue to burnish out the edges of these shadows so that they're really, really soft. Then I create a really high contrast moment by bringing a sharp, crisp edge into the contour of the leaf next to that cast shadow. To really keep my drawing unified, I made sure to use the same colors in each part of the cast shadow. And I was using a lot of grays, blues, and lavenders. Sure, I could have used just a neutral gray and called it a day, but those other colors bring so much more variety and interest. Now I'm moving into the final details of the leaf, and it is so key that you spend time really making those imperfections and those blemishes on the leaf stand out. These are going to be some of your most important details because they're going to make this leaf look like a real leaf. And to that point, when you are selecting a leaf to draw, pick a leaf with imperfections. Don't pick a perfect leaf, because then when you draw it, it's going to appear fake. I know that that seems super goofy, but you want those imperfections to really make the leaf come to life and feel real. Whether you're drawing one autumn leaf or several, as you complete your drawing, it's important to consider the background and the overall final presentation. If you would like your drawing to appear to pop off of a white page and you want to keep a clean white background, then you need to check out this video next, where I share 5 awesome tips for keeping clean white backgrounds. Thank you so much for being here. Now go have a beautiful, creative, and curious rest of your day. Bye.